I was 2 minutes late, 6:02 a.m. on the dot. But apparently, that was enough time for my life to get rewritten without me in it. My mom stepped onto the porch, wheeling her suitcase behind her. She didn't say good morning. She didn't even look irritated, just smiled and said, "You're late," light casual. Like I'd forgotten to bring the coffee, not the fact that I'd planned this entire trip down to the minute. I forced a smile, slid out of the driver's seat, and walked around to help with her luggage. And that's when I saw her, Sienna, my sister, dragging her own suitcase behind her like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like she belonged there. My smile froze. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I already knew. I think part of me had always known. My mom turned to me way too cheerful for what was about to come out of her mouth. "Oh, Harper, we decided Sienna should come instead of you. She's been so stressed lately. She really needs this trip." Instead of me. The words didn't even sting, they just echoed. Like my brain hadn't caught up yet. "Mom," I said, blinking. "I've been planning this for 2 years. I paid for everything." She waved her hand like I just brought up some minor inconvenience. "And we're so grateful, sweetheart. But you're always working. You'll take another trip later. Sienna needs this now." Sienna didn't even look guilty. She smirked, switched her weight onto one hip. "Thanks for understanding, sis," she said, her voice dripping with fake gratitude. I stared at the two of them. My chest felt tight, my throat dry. And then, just to make it a full family affair, my dad came out, shuffling awkwardly eyes, not meeting mine, handing me his suitcase like I was the chauffeur. Like I was just there to drive. "This is unbelievable," I said, and I could hear my voice shake even though I was trying so hard to hold it together. This was supposed to be our trip. The three of us. I wanted to share it with you. "It still is," my mom said brightly, already turning toward the car. "Just with Sienna instead. Don't make this a big deal, Harper. Your sister really needs a break." My name is Harper Lane. I'm 32 years old. And for 2 years, I worked overtime shifts, skipped weekends, and saved every spare dollar to give my parents a trip they'd never forget. Flights, luxury hotels, guided tours. I picked every dinner reservation myself. I'd planned it to the second, not just because I love planning, but because I wanted to give them something they'd never had, something first class, something special. But as I stood there on the driveway, the suitcase I'd packed with such care still sitting in my trunk, I realized something I'd spent years avoiding. It didn't matter how much effort I put in. In their eyes, Sienna would always come first. I clenched my jaw. The sharp reply I wanted to scream sat right behind my teeth. Instead, I smiled. Tight, flat, automatic. "Let's get going then," I said. If they wanted her, fine. They could have her. But I wasn't about to let them enjoy what I built like I wasn't even there. We drove to the airport in near silence. Except for Sienna, of course, she never could shut up when attention was on her. "Oh my God. Mom, did you see that TikTok about Paris? We have to go shopping on the Champs-Élysées. Like, do you think we'll even have time with all the tours?" I kept my eyes on the road. My fingers clenched the steering wheel tighter every time she opened her mouth. "We'll figure it out when we get there," my mom said with a little laugh. When we get there. They didn't even realize I wasn't part of that we anymore. At some point, my dad cleared his throat. "Thanks for driving us, Harper. I know this probably feels unusual." Unusual? What an interesting way to describe betrayal. "I guess that's one word for it," I said, not taking my eyes off the road. He shifted in his seat, said nothing else. As I pulled up to the terminal, Sienna leaned forward from the back seat. "You're not mad, right? I mean, this is really big of you letting me go. I could never afford something like this on my own." I smiled again. "Of course you couldn't. Enjoy the trip," I said. And then I opened the trunk and started unloading their bags like the good daughter I'd always been. The one who planned everything, paid for everything, got left behind anyway. But this time, that version of me wasn't going to last much longer. I wish I could say I cried on the drive home, that the tears came and everything spilled out the way it does in those cliché breakup movies, loud sobbing in the car, mascara down the cheeks, maybe even a dramatic scream into the steering wheel. But I didn't cry. I just drove, quiet, focused, like my brain had gone into lockdown mode. Even the silence inside the car sounded different now, heavier, tighter. Back at my apartment, I opened the door, stepped inside, and stood there like I'd just walked into someone else's life. The suitcase I'd packed the night before was still by the door. Every outfit folded just right. The travel-sized toiletries, the backup charger, the Paris Metro card I'd ordered months in advance. Sitting there like they were still waiting for me to leave. I walked past it, sat on the couch, and stared at the wall. And then I started replaying it all. Every moment. Every time I was overlooked. Shrugged off. Made to feel like my sacrifices were just expected. Christmas 3 years ago, when I bought everyone thoughtful gifts, and Sienna handed me a $10 coffee card. Mom said, "It's the thought that counts." Sienna hadn't even wrapped it. Dad's birthday dinner, the one I made reservations for, paid for, even ordered a custom cake. Sienna showed up an hour late, and he still called her his little sunshine while I cleared the plates. Every family vacation where I made the plans, and Sienna changed them last minute. Every conversation where I spoke, and someone interrupted, and no one ever circled back to me. I kept thinking, was this the worst thing they'd ever done to me? Maybe not. But it was the clearest, the most undeniable. It was the moment that made everything click. They didn't forget me. They didn't overlook me. They chose her, again and again and again. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "Thank you again, sweetheart. We know this wasn't easy. You're such a generous soul." Generous soul. That's what she called me when I did things she didn't want to feel guilty for accepting. I didn't respond. The next day, I stayed home. Called out of work, though, I probably could have gone. Instead, I just sat with the feeling, the growing sense of rage beneath my ribs, the sharp ache of betrayal that didn't want to leave. By noon, they'd landed in Paris. And the calls started. "Hey, we're here. The hotel says there's no reservation under our name. Did something get moved around? Call me ASAP." I stared at the messages, let them pile up, and didn't answer. The more they panicked, the calmer I felt. A strange, icy kind of calm, the kind that makes you realize how much of your life was spent absorbing damage in silence. I didn't feel cruel, I felt clear. And it wasn't just the hotel. It was the Eiffel Tower tour I'd booked with a private guide. The 3-day wine trip through the Loire Valley. The Seine River Cruise dinner with the string quartet. Gone. Every email confirmation voided. Every deposit refunded. Every upgrade reversed. Sienna's voice hit my voicemail next. "Harper, this is seriously petty. We're stuck in this gross hotel and nothing is working. You need to fix this. Call the tour company or something like now." I listened, then deleted it. The next one was from Dad. "Harper, your mother's upset. This whole situation's gotten out of hand. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought Sienna needed a break. Call us back so we can fix this." Fix it. That word again. I'd spent my whole life fixing it. When Sienna forgot to submit her scholarship essay, I helped her fake a timestamp and re-upload it. When she broke up with her boyfriend and cried for 2 weeks straight, I cooked dinner for the family so my parents could focus on her healing. When Mom had surgery and Dad panicked about coordinating care, I moved in for 2 weeks and made it all run like clockwork. They didn't love me for who I was. They loved me for what I did. And when they didn't need me, they swapped me out. By the 3rd day of their trip, I started to feel good, lighter. Like the version of me they depended on had quietly stepped out the door and wasn't coming back. I cleaned the kitchen, took out the trash, rearranged my bookshelves. I finally opened that box from IKEA that had been sitting in the corner for 6 months and built the little coffee table I'd never had time for. For the first time, I could hear my own thoughts. And then Grace showed up. She's my best friend, the kind who knows when to show up with takeout and zero judgment. She walked in, dropped the bags, and said, "I heard from your mom. She said you're being difficult." I snorted. "That's one way to put it. She also said you ruined the trip and that Sienna's devastated." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I opened the wine, poured 2 glasses, and handed her one. I canceled everything I said. Grace raised an eyebrow. "Everything. Every tour. Every reservation. Even the upgrade to business class." She stared at me for a second. Then good. That's it. Not a lecture, not a warning. Just good. They left me behind like I didn't matter. I said, my voice low. I gave them everything, and it still wasn't enough. Grace sipped her wine. No, it was too much. That's the problem. I looked at her, and something cracked. "I don't think I know how to stop trying," I whispered. "You just did," she said. And that night, I slept like I hadn't in months. The messages from my family didn't stop. My mom left one with a shaking voice. "We don't know what to do over here." Nothing's going right. You really hurt your sister. My dad? We've been talking. We just think this reaction is too extreme. Sienna, you're just bitter. You always have been. You can't stand me being the favorite. Favorite! The word stung, not because it was untrue, but because it had taken me this long to admit it. They'd been telling me who they were all along. I was just too desperate to belong to listen. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, opened my laptop, and opened the spreadsheet, the same one I used to plan their dream vacation. I stared at it for a long time. All the work, all the tabs, all the color-coded perfection. It looked like a love letter no one ever read. And then I opened a new tab, typed in solo travel ideas. I didn't know where I was going, not yet. But I knew one thing for sure. Next time I packed a suitcase, it would be for me. I didn't expect the silence to last. By the end of the week, their messages had gone from demanding to desperate. Missed calls, long texts, some angry, some passive-aggressive, a few pretending like none of it had happened. And then came the voicemail. I remember I was folding laundry, the kind of dull chore that lets your mind wander, when I saw my dad's name flash across the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something told me this one would be different. Harper, he said, his voice low and tired. Your mom wanted me to call. She thinks you'll listen to me. Pause. Deep sigh. Look, this has all gotten out of hand. Your mom's upset. Sienna's furious. And, well, it's just a mess now. But you're better than this. That sentence. I stood there holding a towel in one hand and the phone in the other, heart pounding. Better than this. What did that even mean? He kept talking. You've always been the reasonable one, the one who keeps everything together. This isn't like you. And that was it. That was the moment. Something in me, something that had been holding on for years, cracked wide open. I put the towel down, walked to the window, let the phone rest between my cheek and shoulder. You're right, I said, my voice clipped. It's not like me. Because I'm finally not bending over backward to clean up a mess I didn't make. There was silence on his end. I let it hang there for a second. Then, you think I'm punishing the family over one decision. You think this is about just the trip. Harper, he started. No. You don't get to interrupt this part, I said. You replaced me on a trip I spent years saving for. You didn't even ask. You just assumed I'd understand. That I'd smile and help you pack. It wasn't like that, he said, but even he didn't sound convinced. Wasn't it? I asked. Every single time something came up, it was always Sienna's needs first. I was the one who had to adjust, cancel, rearrange, smile, so she wouldn't spiral. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't need you to say anything, I told him. I just need you to understand that I'm done being the afterthought. I ended the call without waiting for a response. And then I broke. For hours I sat on my kitchen floor, shaking, crying into my sleeves. All of it hit me at once, the sadness, the fury, the shame. Not shame for what I'd done, but shame for how long I'd put up with it. For how many times I'd smiled through gritted teeth. For how I'd let their love be conditional on what I could offer. It wasn't just about the trip. It was years of being invisible, unless I was useful. Birthdays where no one asked what I wanted. Conversations where my words got steamrolled. Even now, when I finally fought back, they made me the problem. It was too much. I curled up on the floor and let myself feel it all. I didn't try to be the composed one. I didn't try to rationalize anything. I just let myself be heartbroken. Like really heartbroken. Not over a man, not over a job, but over the family I had always wanted and never truly had. Sometime around midnight, I picked myself up, washed my face, looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. My eyes were swollen, my face puffy, but my gaze was clear. Something had shifted. I wasn't the reasonable one anymore. I was the one who'd finally had enough. The next day, I did something that surprised even me. I got dressed, put on makeup, and drove to my parents' house. Not to yell, not even to talk. I just wanted to see it, the place that raised me, the place that taught me to stay quiet. I parked in their driveway and just sat there. The curtains were drawn. The porch light was off. It looked smaller than I remembered. Everything about it felt tight, confined, like I'd outgrown the frame they built around me. I didn't go in. I didn't knock. I didn't want another confrontation. Instead, I opened the notes app on my phone and wrote something. They raised me to be useful. I'm learning how to be whole. Then I turned the ignition and drove home. Back in my apartment, I walked past the still-packed suitcase by the door. I opened it, slowly, unpacked every dress, every outfit, folded each one back into the closet. Then, I took the suitcase itself and shoved it deep into the back of my bedroom closet. The trip was dead. Not just the one to Paris, the whole idea that I needed to earn their love by proving myself over and over. I needed to let it die, so I could live. The funny thing about silence is how quickly it becomes comforting once you stop fearing it. The calls slowed. The texts dried up. At first it felt weird, like I'd forgotten something, like a task was undone. But then it started to feel like freedom. No more jumping to respond. No more apologies I didn't owe. No more guilt trips in the shape of family check-ins. I'd spent so many years keeping the peace that I'd forgotten what peace actually sounded like. Now it sounded like morning coffee with no background anxiety. Like music playing at full volume in my kitchen and me dancing alone with a spoon in my hand. Like breathing real breathing for the first time in years. Grace came by a lot that week. She didn't hover, didn't push, just existed in my space with this quiet kind of understanding that made it safe to relax. She brought pastries from that bakery I'd always said I wanted to try, but never made time for. We sat on the porch and ate in our pajamas. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't have to. "This feels like the beginning," she said one morning, licking powdered sugar off her finger. "You look different." I laughed. "I think I'm still figuring out who I am without them." "Good," she said. "That means you're on the right track." That afternoon, I went online and signed up for a local photography class. Something small 2 nights a week. I'd always loved taking pictures, but never made space for hobbies that didn't serve someone else's needs. I started journaling too. Nothing fancy, just scribbled thoughts and lists and bits of anger I still hadn't let go of. I wrote things I didn't even know I felt until I saw them in ink. Like, why did I believe I had to be useful to be loved? How many times did they choose her before I finally noticed? What happens when I stop showing up just to be accepted? The answers weren't always clear, but the writing helped me feel real again. One evening, I was cleaning out the hall closet when I found the Paris folder. Printed itineraries, backup confirmations, handwritten notes, color-coded tabs for each day down to the dinner reservations. I'd even made a packing checklist for my parents' items I thought they might forget, like adapters and comfortable shoes. I sat on the floor and stared at it for a long time. Not with bitterness, with awe. Because that level of care, that ability to plan, anticipate, hold space for everyone's needs, that was love. And just because they hadn't valued it didn't mean it wasn't worth something. They hadn't seen it, but I could, and maybe that was enough. A few nights later, I opened my laptop and started planning again, but this time for me. I didn't reuse the old spreadsheet. I opened a blank one, typed in a single-cell solo trip, Italy. It started small. Flight to Rome. 3 nights in Florence. Day trip to Venice. A weekend in Cinque Terre. I researched local cafes, art museums, scenic train routes. No backup plans. No coordinating around anyone else's preferences. Every line I typed felt like reclaiming a part of myself that had been buried under years of self-sacrifice. Booking the flight was terrifying. Not because I was afraid to go, but because for once I wasn't doing it for anyone else. 2 weeks later, I boarded that plane with a journal, a camera, and a carry-on suitcase packed for one. When the wheels lifted off the runway, something inside me did too. Italy was everything I didn't know I needed. I wandered cobblestone streets with no destination. I drank espresso in tiny alley cafes where no one knew my name. I ate pasta at a table for one and didn't feel sorry about it. There was a kind of magic in being anonymous. No one there expected me to fix their day, or listen to their drama, or absorb their resentment. I could just be. One afternoon in Rome, I climbed the Spanish steps and sat at the top with a gelato in one hand and my camera in the other. I snapped a photo of a couple kissing, then another of a little girl feeding pigeons. Then I turned the camera on myself. No makeup, no forced smile, just me sunburned free and happy. I didn't send the picture to anyone. That was the point. In Florence, I sat along the Arno River and wrote down a list in my journal. Not a to-do list, a want-to list. Learn Italian, start a side business, travel to 5 more countries, move out of the city, Fall in love with someone who doesn't make me earn it. By the time I reached Cinque Terre, I wasn't thinking about my parents or Sienna anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just me. On my last night, I had dinner on a cliffside patio with a glass of wine, my journal, and the sound of the sea crashing below. I watched the sunset paint the sky in gold and violet, and I realized something. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need them to fix it, because I wasn't broken anymore. When I got home, my phone lit up with texts. "Hope you had a nice trip. Maybe we can all talk soon." I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because I didn't owe them immediate access to me anymore. My time, my peace was mine now. Instead, I unpacked slowly, hung my souvenirs on the walls. Each item felt like a receipt from a new life, one I'd finally started living for myself. It was about a week after I got back when the call came. I saw my mom's name on the screen, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel dread. I didn't feel anything, really, just stillness. I let it ring, then I answered. "Hi, Harper," she said, her voice unusually soft. Controlled, careful. "Hi, we heard you were back." "You did?" Pause. "How was the trip?" I thought about the markets in Florence, the sea breeze in Rio Maggiore, that one perfect moment on the Spanish Steps when I felt like I existed entirely for myself. "It was amazing," I said. Not cold, not kind, just the truth. "I'm glad," she said. Another pause. "We've been thinking a lot about what happened." I said nothing, let her fill the space. "Maybe we handled things poorly." I let out a breath through my nose. "Poorly," she hesitated. "Okay, badly. We didn't realize how much it would hurt you." "You didn't ask," I said. "You just assumed I'd take it, like always." "I know," she sounded tired. "Your dad and we thought Sienna needed it more." "She always needs it more," I said. "And I'm always the one expected to step aside." There was a silence so long, I thought she might have hung up. "Sienna feels bad too," she said eventually, "though she's still blaming you for how things went." I huffed a quiet laugh. "Of course she is." "You've made your point," she said gently. "But we don't want to lose you." That hit something soft. Not because I believed it, but because for so long I was afraid of exactly that. "But now, I'm not trying to punish you," I said. But this wasn't just about one trip. It was about everything. Years of being second to someone who never even noticed the space I made for her. "I understand," she said. "No," I replied, "but you're starting to. And that's a beginning." Another pause. "We'd like to try," she said. "To do better. We don't expect things to go back to normal, but maybe we could start over." I considered it, carefully, not with guilt, with boundaries. "Maybe," I said, "but it'll take more than words." "I know, and I'm not in a rush." "I understand." We ended the call there. No promises, no hugs, just a small tentative thread that I could choose to pick up later or not. And for the first time, that choice felt like mine. The weeks that followed felt different. Not because everything was perfect, but because for the first time in my life, I wasn't bending myself into shapes to make others more comfortable. I responded to texts when I wanted to. I skipped family dinners if I didn't feel like going. I didn't ask for approval. I didn't chase connection. I just existed in my own space, and it was enough. The photography class was going well. I'd made a few friends, people who only knew me as Harper, not the responsible one or the dependable older sister. Just me. I'd started going on hikes on the weekends, too. Little trails at first, then longer ones. There was something about reaching the top of a hill, breathless and alone, that made me feel grounded. Sometimes I brought my camera, sometimes just my thoughts. One afternoon, as I was packing up to head home from a trail, I saw a missed call from my mom. No voicemail, no text, just a missed call. I didn't call back. I didn't panic. I just noted it and moved on with my day. That's how I knew I'd changed. Sometime later, I ended up driving past my parents' house. I hadn't planned to stop, but something pulled me toward that old porch. I parked outside and just watched the house for a minute. The flower pots I bought last year were still there. Cracked, now the paint peeling. The porch swing was empty, still swayed slightly like someone had just left it. I walked up, sat down, and let the wind brush past me. A few minutes later, the front door creaked open. It was Sienna. She looked surprised. Caught off guard. She stepped outside but didn't sit. "I figured you'd show up eventually," she said. I didn't answer. You know, she continued, you really made a mess of that trip. I looked at her. No, I made it clear whose trip it was. She crossed her arms. You didn't have to cancel everything. That was extreme. You didn't have to replace me, I said. That was cruel. She blinked but said nothing. I spent 2 years building something beautiful. You walked in, smiled, and took it like you always do. Mom said you've been dramatic. I'm sure she did, I said, standing up. But this isn't about being dramatic. It's about being done. Done with what? Being the one who's always expected to fold, to accommodate, to understand. I'm not doing it anymore. She didn't respond. I walked down the steps and turned back once. You don't have to like it, I said. You just have to get used to it. And I left. That night, I sat on my own porch. Same swing, different view. A cup of tea in my hand. A journal in my lap. I didn't write a list this time. Just one sentence. I am not anyone's backup plan anymore. A breeze passed through the trees. Somewhere a wind chime sang softly. The world was quiet, peaceful. Not perfect, but mine. They thought I'd always be there to plan, to fix, to sacrifice. But the moment they replaced me, they set me free. Now I don't wait to be chosen. I choose myself. I used to think love meant showing up no matter how invisible I felt. That if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, proved myself enough, they'd finally see me. But some people don't notice what you give until you stop giving it. I didn't cancel that trip to be cruel. I did it because it was never mine anymore. Now I don't wait to be chosen. I choose myself. And in doing that, I finally found the kind of peace no approval could ever give me.